All right, let's dive in, shall we? Today we're exploring the childhood of, well, J.K. Rowling.
The one and only, the mind behind Harry Potter.
Exactly. But what's really cool is we're using, well, a Korean FAQ as our source.
Oh, interesting.
I know, right? It's called, hang on, I wrote it down. Puchono and testsa.
Okay, I don't speak Korean, so.
Yeah, it means pasted text. But hey, maybe within these translated excerpts, we'll find like little nuggets about Rowling's early life.
Yeah, little sparks of magic that led to the world we all know and love.
I love that. Okay, so her family, her mom, Anne, she sounds lovely. The source says she was like super devoted, cheerful.
Yeah, and apparently a fantastic cook.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh. Family meals were a big deal in the Rowling household.
Okay, but beyond just, the food, was there something special about them?
Definitely. It wasn't just about eating. It was about, like, connection, storytelling,
It makes me think of those amazing Hogwarts feasts.
Right.
Do you think, could those have been inspired by, like, Rowling's own family dinners?
It's definitely possible. Food, think about it. It plays a huge role in the books. It's not just fuel. It's like this symbol of community. Like those feasts, they bring everyone together.
You're so right. It's more than just filling their bellies. It's like a shared experience.
Exactly.
And speaking of sharing, it's clear that books, they were everything to Rowling growing up.
Oh, yeah. Her mom, Anne, was a big reader. Their house was like overflowing with books.
Wow, bookroom's dream.
Totally. And there's a really sweet anecdote about her dad reading to her when she was sick with measles.
Oh, that's so cute. It really shows like an environment where reading wasn't just allowed, it was encouraged.
Right. Both parents nurtured her love for stories. It wasn't just a hobby. It was something special.
It makes you wonder how much that support shaped her as a writer.
Having both parents actively encouraging her, that must have been huge.
Yeah, it gave her this foundation to become the storyteller she is today.
Totally worth thinking about. Now, let's talk about Diane.
Rowling's sister.
Yeah. The source makes it seem like she played a pretty big role in, Rowling's writing journey.
Oh, in what way?
Well, Diane was like Rowling's first audience. Think about it. The source says Rowling wrote her very first story just to entertain Diane.
Oh, that's amazing. So 6 years old, already writing stories.
Exactly. And Diane was her first fan, giving her that initial, push.
It's so powerful to have someone believe in your creative, potential, especially when you're that young.
Absolutely. And speaking of creativity, let's talk about some of the seeds of magic, I guess you could call them, that were present in her childhood.
Okay, I like where this is going.
So one thing that really stands out from the source is that she and her mom, they walked to and from school together.
Together. Oh.
Yeah, even when she was a teenager.
Wow. Most teenagers wouldn't be caught dead with their mom.
Right, but it shows you how close they were, almost like sisters.
Yeah, it really does. And her mom, Anne, she sounds so supportive. The source mentions her telling a neighbor that young Joe was upstairs writing a novel.
Imagine the impact of that. Someone believing in your writing that much, especially when you're young and probably full of self-doubt.
It's heartwarming. She had her own personal cheerleader.
Absolutely. Oh, and get this. Remember the Hogwarts Express?
Of course. Who could forget that?
Well, apparently, Rowling's parents met on a train.
What? Really?
Yep. Just a chance encounter that, turned into a love story.
Wow, that's like a real-life echo of the Hogwarts Express. The symbolism is incredible.
Right. It makes you think about journeys, new beginnings, all that stuff.
It's like that chance meeting, their love story. It's somehow woven into the very fabric of Harry Potter.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
It is, and it just shows you, how seemingly ordinary things can become, inspiration.
Especially for creative minds.
Totally. So we've got family dinners, bedtime stories, school walks. It's all there. It's amazing to see how these little pieces formed the foundation for, the J.K. Rowling we know today.
Right. It's like the roots of her creativity are right there.
It's fascinating.
So, we've talked about Rowling's family life, but what about her school years?
Yeah. Was she top of her class? Straight A's, all that?
Well, not exactly. It seems she had her strengths and weaknesses like anyone else.
Really? That's surprising.
Yeah, you'd think the woman who dreamed up, the entire world of Harry Potter would have aced every subject, right?
Right. So what was she good at?
Languages. Big surprise there, right?
Makes sense. She's such an amazing writer.
Yeah, the source specifically mentions her excelling in English and modern languages. Apparently her teachers even, praised her writing back then.
Wow. So those writing skills were there early on.
Seems like it. But on the flip side, math wasn't exactly her favorite.
Oh, math. Yeah, I can relate to that.
The source even mentions her struggling with a math problem and feeling kind of discouraged.
I think we've all been there. Feeling stuck on a problem, it's the worst.
Totally. But it's kind of, I don't know, comforting to know that even, brilliant minds like hers have subjects they find tough.
It makes you wonder, though, if maybe those struggles actually, helped her creativity in some way.
Oh, how so?
Well, maybe math being a challenge forced her to think differently, to problem solve in a more creative way.
That's an interesting point. Maybe it pushed her to think outside the box.
Right. Or maybe it taught her perseverance, sticking with something even when it's hard.
That's a good point, too. Writing a series as complex as Harry Potter definitely takes, tons of dedication and problem-solving skills.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got language is good, math not so much. What about her teachers? Were there any who really, stood out?
The source mentions one, her English teacher at Whiting Comprehensive, Miss Shepherd.
Oh, an English teacher. Makes sense. What was she like?
Apparently a bit unconventional.
Unconventional. Tell me more.
Well, the source describes her as, rebellious in her approach to teaching, encouraging students to think critically, challenge the status quo.
A rebellious English teacher. I love it.
Right. And it makes you wonder if, if maybe her teaching style had an influence on Rowling's writing. All those themes of, rebellion and fighting for what's right in Harry Potter, maybe they came from there.
Yeah, it's a thought, isn't it? It's like, did Miss Shepherd plant a seed?
It's definitely tempting to draw those parallels, but, got to be careful not to read too much into it.
Right, of course. But still, it's cool to think about the impact teachers can have, not just on our schoolwork, but on our whole way of thinking.
Yeah, for sure. It's not just about, the facts and figures. It's about how you see the world.
Okay, so we've covered family, school, teachers. What about, the bigger picture? What was life like in Britain back then?
Ah, you mean the 60s and 70s? Well, it was a time of change. A lot of social and political stuff happening.
Right. So a time of turmoil, but also possibility.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder if any of that found its way into, Rowling's writing.
It's a good question. Did the source mention anything specific?
Not about specific events, but it does say that Rowling was, aware of social injustices, even as a kid.
That's interesting. Because even though the Harry Potter books are, fantasy, they definitely tackle some serious issues.
Right, like prejudice, discrimination, things that are sadly still relevant today.
It's like she took those real-world concerns and wove them into her magical world.
Yeah, which is, I think, part of why the books resonate with so many people. They're not just escapism, they make you think.
So true. Okay, so we've talked family, school, the social context. What else can we learn about, those early years that shaped her as a writer?
Well, one thing we haven't touched on yet is, her actual writing process, her journey to finding her voice. And it wasn't always easy,
Really?
Yeah, the source mentions that she, struggled with self-doubt, that feeling of, am I good enough?
Oh, that feeling. Every creative person knows it too well.
Right. Apparently, she would, write stories and then hide them away, almost like she was afraid to let anyone see them.
I've definitely been there. Got a whole drawer full of, half-finished projects.
I hear ya. But the important thing is that she, kept going. She didn't let those doubts stop her.
And thank goodness for that. Can you imagine if she had given up?
No, Harry Potter, the world would be a much sadder place.
Right. It's a reminder to all of us, not just writers, to, keep pushing even when it's hard.
Perseverance is key. And as we get into Rowling's teenage years, we'll see how she, navigates those challenges, hones her craft, and really starts to embrace her identity as a writer.
That's a great point. Let's move on to those teenage years and see what else we can uncover. Okay, so we've seen Rowling go from this book-loving kid to, a young writer figuring things out. But what about her teenage years? What were those like?
Well, it seems like they were, kind of typical in some ways, a mix of self-discovery and some tough times, too.
Oh, what do you mean?
The source mentions a period of, real sadness after she lost her grandfather.
Oh, wow. Losing a grandparent, that's always tough. Especially as a teenager when everything's already, so emotional.
Yeah, exactly. And it seems like writing became, a way for her to deal with those feelings.
So like a form of therapy almost.
Maybe. The source suggests she might have, channeled that sadness into her writing.
It's powerful, isn't it? Turning difficult emotions into something creative.
It is. And as she, went through those teenage years, her writing kept evolving. She wasn't afraid to try new things.
Like what?
The source mentions her experimenting with different genres, like poetry.
Poetry. Wow. It makes me wonder if we can see any, hints of that in her later work. Maybe a strong sense of rhythm or imagery.
Possibly. It's hard to say for sure, but, exploring different styles probably helped her develop her voice, her ability to, really evoke emotions through language.
It's like she was training her imagination, pushing herself to think differently.
Exactly. And as she kept writing, her confidence grew too. The source says she started, sharing her work more.
That's a big step for any writer, putting yourself out there.
Definitely. And she even entered a writing competition.
No way. Did she win?
Not this time, but even just entering shows, a belief in herself, a willingness to, take a risk.
It's like rejection is part of the process, right?
Totally. You learn, you grow, you keep creating. It's all part of the journey.
It's funny. So much of what we've talked about today, it applies to, anyone chasing a dream. It's not just about talent. It's about working hard, bouncing back from setbacks, and always learning.
That's so true. And as we wrap up this deep dive into J.K. Rowling's childhood, it's amazing to see how, all those seemingly small things, family dinners, stories, school, even teenage angst, it all played a part in shaping the woman who gave us, well, this incredible world we all love.
It's really something, isn't it? It makes you wonder, what is it about some people that lets them create such magical things? So many of us have happy childhoods, but so few go on to, write books that touch millions.
It's a good question. Maybe it's about, I don't know, tapping into something deep inside, something that connects us all.
I like that. Maybe we can all find a little bit of that magic within ourselves. Thanks for joining me on this journey into J.K. Rowling's childhood. It's been a real treat. It's TOC.